Hi, I'm Mark Small, Civil Discourse Now. This is December 4th, 2024. We're discussing education, the infection of Hamilton County schools by Micah Beckwith, the GOP Lieutenant Governor-elect. We're almost a co-host, such a frequent guest on the show, Cassie Jackson. Cassie, how is it going?
Going well. Thank you again for having me on.
Oh, absolutely, all the time. Okay, so there have been incidents specific to Micah Beckwith and local youth that have not been very, very good. Let's talk about those. You have a lot of understanding and facts on this. Is that correct?
I do. Unfortunately, my heart is like beating out of my chest. It's hard for me to talk about these, but we're going to go over them just people that are catching up with all of this now. So we can start. Let's start with Micah Beckwith and abuse in his previous churches. And I say previous, and I have experience actually in Micah Beckwith's current church with my children's, which we're not going to go into right now, but it also is current child abuse. And so he at Northview in Carmel, when he was a youth pastor, at one point was doing a sermon or his little singing, or I don't know, but the lesson and sermon was to love thy father. And he was requesting of all of these kids to say that. And there's one young man, Gregory, who has been on previous episodes, and certainly I'm sure we can have him on again and he'd be willing to come on with you, but
Absolutely.
yeah, who's an autistic man, and he was a teenager at the time, and he got up and started making his way to the exit. He got out of the room. He was at the doors to the church to actually exit, and Micah came, flying out after him, and questioned why he was leaving. And Gregory said to him, I don't want to say that, because his dad had been not he did not have a good relationship growing up with his dad. I'm not going to put words into his mouth. And Micah put himself in front of the door and the child now to where Gregory had to turn around to him. And he said, why can't you just say this? You just really, you need, and pressed him on it. And as Gregory continued to refuse, then Micah said, well, may I pray with you? And before Gregory could answer, he had placed his hands on Gregory. And again, that's significant because Gregory's autistic, right? And when you meet Gregory, he will tell you that. And so it's not something that if this child had been in Micah's church and he knew him, that he would not have known at this point, right? Nonetheless, he put his hands on Gregory and started praying over him before eventually Gregory was allowed, right, to leave. And so the second instance, I want to hold space for each of these stories, but because we're rolling through, I don't want you to think as I move on quickly that that doesn't deeply, right. And the second was with a teenage girl at that same church who came to Mr. Beckwith, who was her youth pastor, right? As one of the people that she trusted, or she felt like she trusted at the time, and expressed that she had been raped by one of these other people in the church. And it was Micah,
was it a rape or a sexual battery without allegation?
No, she was raped. She was raped by someone in the church that Micah, yeah. And so anyway, Micah protected that person. He protected that reputation of that person, instead of as a mandated reporter, which he is as a youth pastor or anybody in a pastoral role. If they suspect that there's been child abuse, it doesn't matter if the age of, and I don't know the age of this, it was a young man. I don't know the age. I'm just saying it wouldn't have even mattered had it been, between two teenagers. That's criminal act. And for him not to go to the police, what he ended up doing is shaming her online. And he said to her, what you're doing is just trying to create a Brett Kavanaugh situation.
No, actually, I think he said, I'm not going to Brett Kavanaugh that guy.
Yeah. Basically. And so, and then had the church send the child who continued to talk about it online cease and desist, so that to truly try to legally silence her.
And then, okay, and again, not diminishing how awful that is, but because of brevity on time here.
Yeah,
The
so
most recent then.
this is the most recent then, and this is where I think Mr. Paul Kaiser and his ability to calculate and mitigate risk for these children, all of them in the school district, is really in question at this point. I am questioning it at this point because I don't. I'm going to say a timeline, and if I'm off by a few, whatever, we'll just note. About, I would say now a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, there was an incident where a child took a picture of a trans girl in the girls' restroom at Westfield High School. That child went on to post the trans child's picture online to her social media accounts, and then the father of that child did as well. So this was a parent that then took this other student's, a minor's photo, and posted it to, and Micah Beckwith commented on, which is horrific, and puts this child in all kinds of risk. Like, let's not even pretend it does not, right? That is unacceptable that you're posting a picture of a minor in the bathroom. The school district, Westfield Washington Schools, called this parent and said, you are endangering a child's life. You need to remove those posts. Now we'll go to when Micah Beckwith was furious that this happened, and this is how he spun it. What he said on this he mentioned it multiple times on the radio station, and this was when before he had been re-invited, right? When he was very upset and was doxing the superintendent and asking people to call this man's number, trying to get him back in the schools. He had commended this father for what he did, right? He
Posting the photo.
For posting the photo, and the way he stated it was this to his little base. He said, a couple weeks ago, there was a boy in the girls' bathroom, and Westfield Washington Schools called a parent and threatened to sue them if he didn't take this down, and for alerting the community that there's a boy in the girls' bathroom. That's what he was doing, and then he gets threatened to be shut down and sued because, he doesn't have the right to freedom of speech. Sick. These are children. These are children. If people don't see that and don't see what's wrong with that, and they think it's really a father posting a trans girl's photo in a place like this with the kind of rhetoric that Micah Beckwith uses, and the people that he has at his disposal, who now even more feel more emboldened to. And when I say dox, for people that don't know what that means, that's not just like harassing online. Doxing means releasing personal information about people to the wrong people. It includes all kinds of stuff, and it makes it also, and this is why I'm skipping, but I think this is important, because what Beck, and the phone conversation between Beck and the superintendent was like over 10 minutes long. And what I'm really happy Beck also dug into was the idea of doxing these teachers. And she said, like, her sentiment to him was, is this a safe work environment for these teachers to have to come into? Because the superintendent kept being like, well, Micah Beckwith has and we'll talk about this shortly, no ability to get teachers fired. He's not in education. That's not his professional role. And Beck kept saying, we're not talking about a professional role. We're talking about on a personal note, which he's in a recognized domestic terrorist group, right? And he has people that are Moms for Liberty, which is recognized by the Southern Poverty Law Center, who has been the expert and the agency that everyone has gone to over the last 4 decades to identify and get information on both foreign and domestic threats.
Okay, we're going to do another segment today, but right now we're going to have to pull this one to an end. Cassie, thank you very much for being on. Keep tuned. This is Mark Small, Still Discourse Now, and we'll be back later today. Hold it.